Of course, it's great to be with you. I'm always pleased to be in the presence of greatness and to talk gymnastics and talk about uh, a rising program in BYU, and then talk about some of your the experiences that both of you have had. So for those that are chiming in and are attendees and are not aware of who you are, let's kind of set this up and give them an idea of what kind of greatness we're talking about here. So Mary, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing and how gymnastics became such a big part of your life?
I'm Mary, and I've been a head coach in college for a couple of years. I was the alternate to the 96 Olympic team and member of the 95 world team, bronze medal world team, and the 95 gold medal Pan American team. Was the youngest to make a national team at the age of 10. Started gymnastics when I was 3, so been around a long time.
Okay, started when you were 3. Guard, can you beat that? Did you start before you were 3?
Well, I grew up in a gym, thanks to my dad. So, he was a national team member, NCAA national champion in the 70s. I came along. He got retired from, competing as a gymnast and went straight into coaching. And so I just kind of grew up going to the gym every day. And for me, gymnastics was just a fun activity. It wasn't something like I took really serious growing up. It was my dad and going to gymnastics meets and playing on the foam pits and flipping on trampolines. And it wasn't like, hey, we're going to go in here and go work your Olympic routines. It was all about just, having fun. And it was a fun activity that all of us kids did growing up. Back in the 80s, we used to live on a cul-de-sac in Orem, and we'd have the old station wagon with the back seat that would face the wrong way, and we would fold all the seats down. This is before seatbelt laws.
How did any of us survive?
We would drive the neighborhoods and just honk the horn, and kids would come piling out of the houses and then jump in through the back window, and we would drive up to the BYU gym and just play and have birthday parties in there. And so those were kind of my childhood memories growing up. And then, Dad retired as a coach and went back to medical school. And that's kind of when I started going to a club and, lessons and gymnastics meets on the weekends. And so just kind of been a part of my life, my whole life. I'm not quite sure what I would do without it. I'm really struggling because of COVID-19 right now. You can see I'm at home just trying to get some stuff done and working from home, staying safe, planning for the 2021 season and beyond.
Mary, do you have uneven bars somewhere in your house?
I wish. I really wish. I have pirouettes so that I can do handstands. And
Well, obviously, both of you are doing your darndest to make the most of this thing. But Mary, let's throw it back towards you. Being a coach, and I'm sure feeling antsy and wanting to go out and recruit and be involved and things like that. What are you doing to make the most of this time?
Mostly just looking for potential athletes for team and kind of figuring out what's going to be next in the future. Always designing Leos. Planning meet seasons and keeping my kids busy.
Okay, well, that sounds like quite the checklist. Guard, you need to talk to Mary when it comes to Leos, right? You have a problem solved here.
I got assistant coaches for that. I don't have to do a thing with apparel. And it's probably a good thing because I think we'd be competing in maybe just either Navy one night and Royal the next night. That would be our 2 color choices. So right. For the girls' sake, the Leos and the uniform design is very important part of our sport, and thank goodness I don't have to be in charge of it. Mary can attest to this, but it's fascinating for me to just watch the process of a uniform get made. I mean, it starts literally with like sketches on a napkin to more kind of official drawings with like colored pencils and then computer animated artwork that spins 360 degrees to prototypes being made to fittings. and then you actually get the uniform in the mail. I mean, this just takes weeks and weeks and months.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll start in June with a new Leo and barely get it in time for competition season, which is in January. And then the fact that they show up and the sizing isn't right, and you're having to make alterations, it's pretty amazing what it entails. You know, Natalie Brookman and Brogan Evanson, who's in charge of the BYU uniforms, I think they've really updated our team. We look great out there. We definitely have some fan favorites, but it's a fun process for me just to sit back and watch and be kind of a fan of the sport at that point.
Sure. Uniforms and Leos have obviously evolved, but that being said, both of you excelled in whatever you were wearing and both started very young. So, Mary, at what point did you realize in your young gymnastics career that, hey, I'm pretty good at this thing and I want to pursue it? When did that switch get flipped?
I don't think I really ever thought I was really good. I had started in tap and jazz when I was 1. My mom put me in, and I guess I was a protege with tap. I don't really remember it. And when I was 3, I was being babysat, and the lady took my 2 brothers and I to the gym because she had kids in the gym, and I was hooked. And I came home and told my mom I wanted to be a gymnast, and she didn't have any money, and she got eye level with me and said, you have to pick. You can be a dancer, you can be a gymnast. And I was like, gymnast, sign me up. But she really didn't think I had any potential or anything there. And I was teaching myself standing back flips when I was 3 years old. Because my stuffed animals could do it, that was my theory. And I luckily didn't get hurt or die in the process, but was teaching myself crazy stuff. And nobody really seemed to notice. I was in a club gym that no one took any notice. I was like a circus performer, you know, no form, no flexibility, but would do anything. If you dared me, I would try anything. And my mom, when I was 9, saw a news article about a local gym who had 6 elites at it, and they had just won their like 20th 10 and open team state title. So she's like, well, that's the gym. If you're going to be any good, you have to go to. And I had just become the worst level 5 in the state of Nevada. So that was my claim to fame there. I was the worst. And we went, and this coach, he took me around to each event, and Neil Resnick, he was the head coach at Boise State for many years. And he afterwards told my parents, this kid has what it takes. She's going to be an elite. She's going to go to the Olympics. This is what we want to do. And my dad was like, that kid out there, are you sure? And I didn't really know what the Olympics were. My goal was to be the best in the world and someday go to China. And I don't know why China. That was a country I chose since I was 3. I didn't make it to China, got to Japan. But and so I just started this pursuit, you know, and like Gard, it starts with that love of, for me, I felt invincible and I loved flipping and swinging. And so it was just this fun thing that I got to do. And I loved when people doubted me, you know, when you show up at 10 years old and this whole USAG panel is like, what are you doing, Neil? This kid's too young. She's going to have a problem. She's not going to be able to handle it when she gets to championships. And then to show up at championships and not only handle it, but make the team and take second place and win bars and be like, yeah, in your face, people, you know, was exciting for me because I'm a very determined, passionate, competitive person. So I loved when people doubted me. But I would say the very first time that I realized that I was good was probably at Olympic trials. And I was like, I have to be a little bit good to be here. Because I just didn't have a lot of belief that I won all these titles, I won all these places, but it was just normal. And then to kind of make it to that end goal was like, oh, I can do it. I am okay. I'm good. I'm pretty decent at this. So that was probably when I really realized what it all meant, I guess, in the end.
Wow, it took you all the way to Olympic trials. I promise you that other people were impressed with you and thought you were fantastic before Olympic trials, but
They
that's
did.
obviously part of the drive.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm seeing this theme developing between you two. You need to not really have a fear of anything, whether it be riding in the back of station wagons with no seat belts and the seats down and flipping all over the place, or teaching yourself standing backflips at 3. That you need to have some of this if you want to be a successful gymnast. Is that fair, Guard?
Yeah, I think, you talk to any gymnast, any high level gymnast, and other than maybe a family member that was a gymnast, but how did you ever get started? And it literally starts with flipping off the sofa in the living room and mom realizing, okay, we got to do something about this, and just taking them down to the local gym that's close by, whether they just be for recreation and for fun, or whether it be high level competitive. It's an activity that kids like to do. I'll take from the famous movie Toy Story, we're not flying, we're falling with style. And that's what it does at a young age, just teaches you how to fall with style. And then whether you take those skills at a young age, into competitiveness like me and Mary have done, or whether you go on to be other athletes or musicians or whatever, it instills a level of discipline, of being able to set goals and conquer fear in such a young age that you can't really mimic that in other sports. I think at such a young age. That's why you can start them at age 3, 4, 5 years old, kind of down that path. And like I said, whether they continue that, it's not really important. It's those skills that they learn early on that the sport of gymnastics gives them to just excel at life, I think.
Yeah.
Mary, did you want to add to that?
I was just say gymnastics builds great fundamentals for all sports. I mean, I have 5 children. They've all done gymnastics, but they're competitive swimmers and divers. And it has definitely helped them, enjoy working out, enjoy achieving goals. And having worked in club from mommy and me all the way up, you see the same thing. It's very satisfying to see little kids figure out a forward roll and get all the way into their college dreams or making national teams. So. Or go off to be great pole vaulters. So.
That too. All right, we've got some questions coming in. We'll get to some of those in just a moment, but I want to address something that both of you kind of just you just dealt with, which is the pressure to perform and nerves. I mean, you both competed at the highest of high levels with the world watching. So how do you handle that as a young athlete? And what advice would you give to young athletes when they're in these pressure-packed situations? Mary, we'll start with you. How did you handle the nerves, and what advice would you give to competitors that want to compete at the highest level?
The mental side of gymnastics is very important. And I had a Russian coach who, when I was 11, had told me gymnastics is 99% mental, 1% physical. And I didn't believe him. I thought, well, English isn't his first language, so I thought it was pretty physical. And that year at championships, I was on bars preparing to go, and I look across the way and I see a girl on beam fall on a trick I do. And the first thing I thought was, I hope I don't fall on that. And I realized right then, oh my gosh, it is mental. I could psych myself out. I could blow bars and blow beam. And so I really took and the mental side wasn't as big in the 90s of having a lot of sports psychologists around. So I did find someone, the national team had someone that I really enjoyed working with, and just learning basically in the meet to put yourself back in the gym where you're comfortable and calming yourself down. And when you're in the gym, putting yourself in high pressure situations to get your nerves up, to learn how to deal with it. And the big thing is when it comes down to it, be in the gym and put on your blinders and ignore everything else and just go.
All right, Guard, how would you handle the nerves when you're at the highest level? Because it takes a unique personality, and both you and Mary obviously have been able to figure that out and compete and do so super well in those high intensity situations.
Yeah, just being able to handle pressure. I think first of all, it starts with the preparation, and you need to have, number one, your first advocate's going to be your coach in your gym, who's going to, teach you skills. They're going to know more about you than you know about yourself, I think. And they're going to hopefully do it in a safe environment. I mean, we lend ourselves to that a lot. You start with foam pits, and then you move a mat in the pit, and then over to maybe a resi mat, which is a softer landing, and then eventually over to a hard landing. So, preparation into those skills, and then putting those skills into sequences, and those sequences turn into full routines, and then having, a training plan that, helps you prepare for what's going to come up, at a particular meet, whether it be the lights, the TV cameras, the sound, the crowd, other competitors. And so, I've been fortunate to have just some of the best coaches that, United States has ever produced, at least for men's gymnastics in my life, who really just taught me about preparation and getting ready for that. And then so trust in your preparation, trust in the process of which puts you there. And then I think, going into a competition of just, I got to have fun. I got to enjoy this. I believe that, the more fun you're having, the looser you are, and the better you're going to perform on the event. And then lastly, while gymnastics is extremely important in my life, there's other things that are important. And so whether you do well and you win, or whether you come short and you didn't perform your best, that's okay. You still got a family that loves you. You still have a great life. My faith played a big part of it, as I know it did with Mary, that, you're a son and daughter of God, and that's okay. It is just gymnastics. And so I think if you have a better, broader aspect of it, then it's not as much pressure pactful as you can make it out to be. I think you can psych yourself out a lot if you've only made gymnastics the most important thing of your life.
All right, great stuff from both of you on that, and that's a tough one to teach. And both of you are still very heavily involved in that, helping your athletes not psych themselves out. I do have some questions I want to get to. This one from Layla Van Komen, who asks, the gym I go to is starting to primarily pay attention to lower levels. I want to move gyms so I can pursue my gymnastics career. I don't think I can get far with gymnastics there. So are there any ways you would suggest to persuade your parents about changing gyms? Probably means it's more money too. So how do you persuade your parents to help you pursue the dream? Mary, what do you think?
It's a tough one because money is always an issue for parents. But, I think the big thing is if they see your drive and dedication, and you can find a gym that has a clear path for you, and you have a clear vision, and you sit down kind of like an adult with your parent and just say, these are my dreams and my goals, and I don't think this gym can do it, but this gym looks like it can, and maybe help with fundraising. I used to have to sell Avon and candy bars and things to help support my gymnastics until I made the national team. To step up and show it's more than just a hobby for you, it's something you're really driven to do, I think goes a long way with parents.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, gymnastics, it's just not an individual, it's a whole family sport. I mean, parents get involved, grandparents get involved, aunt and uncle, I think the mailman gets involved at some point. And so, some of it is just, the cost, but also, the practicality of distance. Can we get you to gym or not? I mean, I've heard of kids traveling 1-2 hours one way just to get to practice every single day. So carpooling becomes very important, and just some of that stuff. I believe you can always get better. Even though gyms right now are shut down, they're starting to come back. You can always find a way to get better. And whether that is, all you need is, a piece of carpet. That's what I tell my kids. All you need is a piece of carpet. You can work on your handstands. You can work on your splits. You can work on your bridges. And if your parents see that drive in you, that you're practicing every single day, and you want to get better, then they're going to spend whatever it's going to take for you to realize your dreams. But if they're having to ask you, hey, did you do your splits today? Hey, did you work on your handstands today? If they're poking you a little bit, they're going to be a little less reluctant, I think, to maybe sacrifice what it's going to take to make it to the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
In a roundabout way, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? The squeaks being, hey, you see me doing gymnastics everywhere all the time. I want to do this. So just be visible in front of your parents. Let them know that that's your clear motivation, right?
Yep.
You know, I tell a lot of kids that, you know, ask me about recruiting and what it takes to be a gymnast at BYU. And a lot of it is just study, be a student of the sport, watch the great broadcasts that you do on BYU TV and study those skills and your current gym. Do they have the equipment, the safety equipment, the coaching, the technique, the upper level kids doing those type of skills? And if not, maybe you need to, you know, have a sit down meeting with the coaches about your goals and your dreams, or what gym in your area are doing those type of skills, are putting kids on college teams. And if that's what you want to do, sometimes you need to follow in those footsteps.
Okay, along the lines of wanting to be a collegiate gymnast, Evelyn Randall asks, I'm 8 years old. I want to be a gymnast at BYU. I've been doing gymnastics since I was 3, like Mary. What should I do to prepare myself right now so I can make it? Mary, you answer first, and then we'll let Gard, the current head coach of BYU, answer as well.
Well, to get into any college, but especially BYU, what I know, I mean, you need to have good grades, obviously. You got to be a good student. You're 8, so you're in grade school. But gymnastically, just like we've talked about, get your basics and your fundamentals, because that helps every big skill that you're going to get. And then as you progress through the sport and get into, you know, level 10 and higher levels, look at the college routines and kind of make sure you have the appropriate skills and start values for the routines, making yourself stand out for the colleges, and then have good morals. I mean, you need to be a good student, a good athlete, and have good moral fiber.
Yeah, 8 years old, you got a lot of time. I love the fact that you have this on your radar, that you have collegiate gymnastics on your radar. Basics, fundamentals. You can't skip over those basics and fundamentals. I mean, every most important skill in gymnastics is a handstand hold, I think. You know, how good is your handstand hold? Can you kick to a handstand? Can you hold it for 10 seconds? And can you do that 10 times in a row without walking, without having a balance check? Is your form and technique correctly? Can you stay up in a handstand for a whole minute, whether that be walking or not? You know, how are your splits? How are your leaps? How are your jumps? These are things you can train all the time. And you got to get those fundamentals down and set, so when you start doing those upper level skills, you're not having to go back and fix basics or problems, which could lead then to an injury. Staying healthy is very important. I think having a balanced life is also very important. So while gymnastics is really important, you know, make sure that you spend time in school, you spend time with your mom and dad and your brothers and sisters, you spend time with in your church and your church activities. So make it a balanced life as well.
All right. Another question coming in from another of our attendees, and this is a thought-provoking question for sure. They say, I don't have the best coaches for my level. What can I do to make up for that? And this is tricky because you're not always going to mesh personalities with coaches and gyms and whatnot. So, Mary, where do you begin the advice there?
That is tricky. In gymnastics, I would say more than most sports, the coach-athlete relationship is very, very important because, as Gard mentioned before, I mean, you're trusting your life with this person. But sometimes you have to kind of look and see, is it the coach that's the problem, or is it me? Sometimes it comes down to it is you as an athlete. You're not listening, you're not making the corrections, and you can go a lot further. But again, at some point you may hit the point of, this coach has taken me as far as this coach is able to take me, and it's time to move on. But you can always be the coach's dream, as I would say, the kid who's the first in the gym, the last to leave. You're there, you're making corrections, you're asking for corrections, you're working extra drills, you're not the lazy kid avoiding everything or working the clock, as I call it. And you're just constantly trying to prove yourself in the gym, in the school, at home. And you can go pretty far even with a coach who maybe wasn't this amazing coach to begin with, because you'll learn together and you'll grow together.
All right, Guard, would you like to add anything to that about working with a coaching situation that might be a little tough?
Yeah, I think you got to get on the same page as your coach. And I think that starts with communication. They have to understand your goals and your dreams, and tell them, I'm going to need your help. I can't do this without you. But then the coach is going to expect certain things from you as well. Then I need you here at practices. I need some consistency. I need your A game every single day. If you slack just one bit, what's a good way to call you out and bring you back to focus so you can go in, hey, that wasn't your best day today, or that wasn't your best turn. And so it's a relationship, and it's a two-way street as well. So it's just not, hey, I'm going to blame my coach. You got to take some responsibility as well. But I do think it's a relationship that you both have got to get on. One of the things when I first got to BYU, that was a hard switch for me to go from a coach in high school and junior high who coached me for 5 or 6 years, and we had a really good working relationship. And then I switched to a coach that had just a different style, and it was really hard for me. I almost left BYU after my first freshman year because that coaching change was very hard for me. I was getting ready for the 1997 U.S. Championships. It's in Denver, Colorado. It was going to be a great opportunity to kind of make my debut as a senior athlete. It was right after the 96 Olympics. Mary had just gotten done, and I was like, all right, it's my time. I've arrived. And my coach came to me and says, no, you're not ready. And I was mad. But don't tell me I'm not ready. But instead of blaming him, I came back to him saying, all right, what do I need to do to get ready? Let's work on this together. And I remember we came up with a really long list of all the skills that I would have to have in routines and when I'd have to have them by. And I went to town. I worked so hard to get those skills so I can put in my routines. And I ended up getting probably almost all of them, just a few, 1 or 2, I just didn't get off that list in time. And I went back to my coach and I said, okay, you're right. I didn't get there in time. Now what do we do? And because we'd worked through that issue, the following year, I'd made the senior national team and then was on it for 10 years, for a decade. And it was really because of that summer. So the summer that I didn't go to championships, the summer that my coach said I wasn't ready, we came to an agreement of what it would take for me to get ready. And then we worked together. And I think that was a pivotal summer for me.
Love to hear that. That's called maximizing the opportunity. Coach, while you are in coach mode, I'm pretty sure that this question is specifically for you. It's from Caitlin, Madison, and Abby. I don't know which Abby it is, but they want to know who's the funniest gymnast on the BYU team right now.
Oh, we have some great kids. Let's see here. We lost 2 great seniors. We lost Brianna Pearson and Shannon Evans. Oh man, I had to go into the gym the other day and take their pictures down off the wall. That's always a hard thing for me to do. We have some really, really good seniors this year. We have 7 seniors this year with all very different personalities. And so, who I think I get the biggest crack up is from Avery Bennett, who doesn't stop dancing. And I've never seen anything like this. This kid dances at everything. And so, maybe who I find most entertaining would be Avery, just because of all the antics that she does. She does this thing with her hands. That's her crown.
Crown, yeah.
So she does her crown. And so I think I just enjoy watching her. So she brings joy into my life. She's a senior. We're really going to miss her, but we get her for 1 more year.
Yeah.
Barry, how do you handle all those big personalities when you're trying to coach a team like that?
You have fun with them. When I was with BYU that year with Guard, I'd say the girl I thought that was the funniest would probably have been Abby Bowden. Would say some of the funniest, most random things that she was serious, and you were just like, I can't even take you seriously. I can't believe you just said that. But you know, they're all just these young, remarkable women who are learning and growing, and they're kind of between that. They've left home and they're not really kids anymore, but they're not real adults yet, and they're making their choices and decisions and wanting their freedom, and it's fun to see them still have their childlike qualities and have fun, because that was one part gymnastically not that I didn't have fun, but I never let go and had fun like a collegiate athlete does. So that's always been fun to be around, because, you know, they'll dance like Avery or Jordan, you know, always dancing. And I'm not that person. So it reminds me that it's okay to let loose a little bit. So.
Okay. Now we're getting into some specifics, some dynamics, followers asking about different types of handstands. So if you guys could recommend, and I want to pretend like I know how to add advice to this, but I don't. But what are the desired techniques, first of all, for press handstands? Guard, how would you answer that?
Oh, yes. I love my handstands. So great question for press handstands. First and foremost, I like getting up on a little bit of elevated of a surface. So your feet could be up, you know, a couple of inches above your hands. And that's going to help you with the strength needed to get up to a handstand. And of course, don't want to jump. You want to lift up on your tippy toes and then press legs around the side. And as you get stronger, then you lower that surface. So if you're up a couple inches, go down to, you know, take a half inch off. Panel mats are great because you can get stronger one panel at a time. So I love using panel mats in our gym. And then the other strength that you would need would be Stalter. So you can do Stalter presses. So starting a candlestick and roll up into a straddle L, and then straddle L, press to a stand, and then stand to a press. And then also I like the negative where you start in a handstand and then you lower down into a straddle L. And I think also working negative strength will help with that, you know, positive strength of pressing to a handstand.
Okay.
You got all that, Spencer?
I got it all.
Those?
I have the notes. I'm typing as fast as I possibly can. I'll work on that. The negative especially. I need some serious work there.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary, let's have you answer kip handstand. What tips and types of conditioning would you suggest to help getting a proper kip handstand?
You know, it starts actually with your jump glide if it's low bar, or your long hang high bar, your glide out into it. Nice hollow hold position. You need to stay rounded. A lot of people get the sway back. Bringing the toes to the bar, arms straight, head in. On bars, it's natural for people to throw their head out. So you want to keep your head neutral or down, looking for your toes. I like planche handstands, and you can do those against a wall, having your toes on the wall and your hands fairly close to the wall and plunging out as far as you can and pushing back up, giving you that strength to lean over the bar. The heel kicks, because it comes from that heel drive, whether your legs are together in your cast or you're straddling up. It's going to come from shoulder strength and abs to get that good glide and lean over the bar, kick your heels.
Okay, I love this. Is just gymnastics virtual clinic. This is fantastic. Okay, I am fascinated by this next question because both of you will appreciate it coming from a faith backdrop. But how did you guys deal, or you as competitors deal with competitions on Sunday? How did both of you approach that? Guard, let's start with you.
Yeah, that is really hard to deal with. And we see that across the board on all sports. And I've had sisters go into ice skating, tennis, other activities that require Sunday stuff. My family, and it's a personal choice, I really do feel like it's more on a personal level. And so I can't dictate whether or not you should or shouldn't compete on Sunday. All I can say is what my personal choice was and the guidance that I got through my parents. And that was try to not compete on Sunday. As best as you can avoid it. And there were times where I just simply couldn't but I could count maybe on one hand the times that I just had to. Missing an invitational is not going to be detrimental to your entire gymnastics career. However, when you get to certain meets that you have to compete on Sunday to qualify, what are other options that you can have? For me, Mary, we're old enough to where we had to do what was called compulsory and optionals. So for us to make it to other levels, state, regionals, nationals, you had to compete one day compulsory and the next day optional. And they went away with that 20 plus years ago. But, now that really forced a lot of our meets on Sunday because it had to go Saturday and Sunday meets. So if it was an invitational, I'd always compete maybe on the Saturday meet, and I wouldn't do the Sunday meet. The other one would be to call ahead, and we'd ask the meet director, is there any way I can go Friday night and then on Saturday with my team? And I would say the majority of the time, most people were willing to let me do that. And so I remember being a level 1, it was level 10, it was class 1 at the time. I'm dating myself, but being a level 10, having to go to the level 5 session and do my optional routines. So all the little level 5s were out there performing their little leg cuts and mushroom routines. And I'd raise my hand and I would do my level 10 routine on the pommel horse for a score. And that was just to get a qualifying score that I could use that would get me to the regionals or to get me to the nationals. And then once I got to the nationals, there really wasn't any place to go. And so, sometimes event finals were on Sunday and I have to make a choice. But, for the most part, what I ended up doing was the meet directors, they knew who I was, and they knew I'd ask them, can I come on Friday? And they would just start putting the level 10s Friday and Saturday and moving the poor level 5s to Sunday. And because they really didn't care with the order of when kids were going. And if there was a conflict, they were more than accommodating. And so first I would work with your coach, your gym owner, to see if they can make any accommodations. Can they make a phone call? Can they switch sessions around? And a lot of the times, gym owners and meet owners can do that. Not all the time, but they can do that. And so I think there's avenues that you can do it. We're not a tournament type of sport where you start on a Thursday and you win and you move to Friday for a few games and you keep winning and then the tournament ends on Sunday. And you go in, you go for your session and your meet's over with. Your whole weekend's over with. And so work with your coach, work with your gym owner, and see if they can put phone calls into these meets that you go to and just ask, is there any way we can put our session on a Friday or a Saturday? In most cases, they'll be willing to accommodate you, in my opinion.
Mary, did you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, same thing. Just for me personally, I didn't have as many Sunday meets. Women tend to compete before the men, so we get, I think, the better slot times. But it was more when it came to a big meet, a qualifying meet, it was just, that's what you had to do. With girls that I've coached, with my own children, we kind of put it in this, you have to make your own choice. And I have had girls in club where we have had level 10s competing with level 5s so they could avoid a Sunday meet. But with my own children and other girls, it's just kind of, if it's the Olympics or it's a national qualifier, it's a big thing that really can't be changed. That's when you're going to have to make your decision as to, is this what I'm committed to and I'm going to be the best in my faith and represent well, or am I going to not compete, and that's your own personal choice that you kind of have to take.
Okay, we're winding down here. We've got a few more minutes, so we'll try and rapid fire these final questions. This from Kristen Sundberg says, I'm 14 years old as a level 10 gymnast, and I have enjoyed coming to BYU camps the past 3 years. My question is, how should I go about putting myself out there to start having collegiate teams look at my skills, specifically BYU? Guard?
I always tell kids, you never bother a coach in an email. Text messages, phone calls are hard to return. But emails can be done at any time. If I can't sleep and I'm up late at night, it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I'm up that late, I'll go through my emails and I can hit a reply back. And so I love emails from kids. So don't be shy of and YouTube. You got to do your YouTube. I know kids are moving to the Instagram, which is getting kind of past me now, but I'm getting better at Instagram. I am, but having that YouTube page. And so here's the information I need as a college coach. Mary can attest is number one, obviously name, age, year in school is very important. There are NCAA rules that does not allow me to reply to email if you are not a junior in high school. So if you're a sophomore, a freshman, or anything younger, I simply just can't reply to you. So that's important. What year are you graduating high school? What year are you in high school? That's very important. But then maybe a coaching contact, so an email. So I could send an email off to your coach to ask a little more couple follow-up questions if I had them. And so again, name, your age, year in school is really important, a coach's contact, and then a link to your YouTube page. And what I like to see in YouTube pages, number one, is your competition routines. That is the best way to showcase yourself. I love watching your new upgraded vault into a foam pit, but it really a lot of times doesn't help me understand that your Chenko double tuck into a loose foam pit is going to translate onto the hard surface of a competition. So number one, I want to see your competition routines. And then watching upgrades is great and fun too. But I spend majority of my time watching the routines that you're doing while in competition.
Okay, let's keep these going rapid fire. Mary, we'll have you answer this one. Just came in. How do you deal with being afraid? How do you handle the emotions when you feel afraid?
That one's, it's individual, but it is a tricky thing. The fear can stop you in your tracks, keep you from progressing, from doing anything. And you need to, with gymnastics specifically, you need to communicate with your coach so they know what you're afraid of. You need to be willing to admit you're afraid. That's really the big thing. And try and figure out what you're scared of. Because it's not really just your back handspring or your series on beam. There's a certain part of it that scares you. And when you can figure out what it is, you and your coach can work together to break down the drills, the concepts, help you feel as safe as possible. And then, doing your best to just stay calm and visualize it going well and trusting in the whole process.
Okay. Another outstanding answer.
Yeah, and I'll jump into that one. I had lots of fear as a gymnast. I balked a lot. And that balking, Spencer, is when you're supposed to do the skill and you don't do it. You freeze.
Very dangerous.
And it leads to, it's dangerous. It's not a good thing. And so any gymnast that is dealing with mental issues such as balking, which is very common in our sport, the best advice I can do is, I love what Mary said, is talk about it. Admit that you're afraid. Talk to someone about it. Don't keep the emotions inside. I always felt like I had this little tiny monster inside my brain that was always there. He was always there in my brain. And sometimes he'd be up and running around and thrash in the room. And sometimes he'd be sleeping in the corner. And so what you're trying to do is get that monster to just calm down and put himself in the corner, and how to do that. What is the best way to calm that monster down? And the first thing is to communicate, to have, visual and verbal cues. Talk to your coach about it calmly, not when you're upset. Being upset and having emotion does not help that little monster in your brain. It only makes it worse. I needed a lot of spotting, so my coaches would just spot me a ton. And then just all of the drills that I had just, the more gymnastics that I learned, the more basics and drills I had to keep doing just to maintain those skills. And I remember, the older I got, the more I had to be in the gym, it felt like. I would go into the gym for an hour or two in the mornings, do my morning conditioning, but I had a list of basics that I had to do every morning. before I could come back in the afternoon to perform my bigger skills that I would do in my routines. And so it was the consistency that I had to develop in order to kind of help that monster out that was inside my head. So it's a very common problem. You're not alone. The best thing to do is talk to your coach, figure out ways that helps calm that little guy down. And you can work through it. I'm someone who made it to a very high level, who had a lot of mental issues in terms of balking. And I made it. So there's proof right there that you can make it.
Oh, that's invaluable advice. So I'm glad both of you answered that. Again, we're running out of time, but we'll get to as many of these as we can. Linda Murray is saying, our team's getting close to making nationals. When you want to add more what do you want to do? Do you want to add more difficulty to the routines, or do you want to work more on stuck landings? Which hits more with judges when you're trying to make it to the national level? Mary, what do you think?
Goodness, it's not necessarily having a huge, packed, complicated routine. That definitely is nice and it's wow. But it's going to be your form, your handstands, your landings. It's the last thing the judges see. Did you step on the landing? Did you stick your landing? And really, it's about trying to be as clean and perfect throughout what your routine each time, and ending with a stick.
Okay. And then guard, let's finish with this one. What's the most important quality of a possible recruit when it comes to trying to impress a college coach? So for you, what are you looking for most?
What do I look? First of all, it's gymnastics. We definitely want to see the gymnastics. That's the first thing. I look at kids. I know my team of who we have. I know who's leaving. I know the holes that we need to fill. So that changes every year. This year we lost, Shannon and Brianna, and they were floor starters. So automatically next year, I need to find 2 kids that are going to replace them on the floor. And so every year you're going to have holes that we need to be filled. So I look at competitive gymnastics in competition routines that I look at them going, will that kid walk into my gym and push a starting lineup? And so become a student of gymnastics, watch our team, watch other teams. What are they doing? What are the skills that they're doing? Look how well they're performing them. We talk about hits and sticks all the time. And you gotta study them. You gotta be doing those types of skills. So that's where it starts. It starts with gymnastics. That'll open up the door. I think consistency and communicating is very important. If you reach out to a coach, they respond back, and then you don't respond again, that doesn't show a lot of consistency or interest. If a coach sends you a questionnaire or some information and you don't respond, then they might move on to a kid that is responding. And so I think communicating is also very important. And the third and final is your schoolwork. And you can get a kid and then look at their GPA, their overall grades. In BYU, it's not an automatic admin. There are academic requirements, both with GPA and ACT, SAT test scores that you're going to have to meet in order to make it to BYU. And unfortunately, there were kids that I've recruited that couldn't make those marks and they had to go to other places. And so, it's the whole thing, but it really starts with gymnastics. You got to do gymnastics to be on a gymnastics team.
Okay. I can think of no better way to end this than asking both of you, what's the coolest trick you can both do right now? Mary?
If I had a gym, I still can do my series on beam and my mount, which was very difficult, and my entire bar routine from the Olympics. So I've tried to maintain it all.
Whoa. Now that
goal
is
is
impressive.
to be like the coolest mom out there that can still do something cool.
I tried to vault the other day. Okay. Let me explain what vaulting is, Spencer. The runway is 80 feet. Okay. You need to run as fast as you can. You leap off of 1 foot, hit a springboard, and then you have to flip and twist while jumping over a vaulting table, and then somehow land on your feet safely. And in gymnastics, vault is like, it's vault. It's easy. It's over in 2 seconds, right? I tried to vault the other day. I got about halfway down that runway, and then the things started popping in my head like, this is not a good idea. Why would anyone want to do this? And I bailed out of it, I think, or I slid over the mat. But gymnastics hurts my body too much. I did it for too long. But I do like the trampoline. And so whenever I walk into the gym, the first thing I'm looking for is, where's that trampoline at? And I can still do double fulls and front Rudies.
Okay.
And even some double fronts if you got a softer landing for me to land on. But I do like the trampoline. So I got a trampoline in my backyard. So I'll find myself sneaking over there and doing some trampoline work. But as far as the tumbling goes, putting on grips, no way. I'm not doing that again.
Just both of you stay safe, okay?
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a lot of fun to hang out with you. I don't often get to hang out with multiple Olympians and national team members, but I can tell you this much. The advice you offered to those watching today is really important and priceless. So we thank you for your time. Wish you continued safety and health, and hopefully we'll see you both back in the gym very soon.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it, Spencer. Thanks for all that you do for BYU Athletics. We appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you to Mary Frederickson, Guard Young. We'll see you soon. Go Cougs.
See ya.
Go Cougs.